Welcome members, officers, honorary alderperson and any members of the public viewing at home this evening's council meeting. Please be seated. There will be no fire drill planned for this evening, so if there is a fire alarm sounds, please make your way from the chambers using either the fire escape to my right or via the staircase and lead off to the lobby outside the chambers. Right, you might see some empty seats. It's only because some of us colleagues are stuck in traffic. So,
I was just going to say Emma McGrath has joined virtually because she gave up trying to get here.
Yeah, thank you. And they're all coming in as they go, so we're just going to pursue them. Thank you. Just give you a couple of minutes, Sam. We'll carry on and we'll just have to adjust ourselves. So please be on my side. Thank you. Before we begin the meeting, it is with sadness that I share the news of a sudden and unexpected passing last weekend of one of our officers within the housing team. The contributions and dedication made a significant impact during their time with us. On behalf of the council, I send my sincere condolences to her family, friends, and colleagues. I ask you to join me in a 1 minute silence, please. Thank you, members. Please be seated. It's never easy to do things like that. Right, moving on. Ms. Willis, may I have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I've received apologies from Councillor Mark Gordon, Councillor Leanne McIntyre, Councillor Jack Olmo and Councillor Helen Whitcroft. And as has been mentioned, so Councillor Emma Jane McGrath and Councillor Julie Hope are joining virtually. And there's also some members who are delayed due to the traffic, I believe, but will be joining.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to invite the returning officer to introduce his report.
Thank you, Mayor. The report setting out the results of the Old Dean by-election on the 24th of October 2024 is before you. You will be aware of the outcome of the by-election, which was the election of Councillor Dave Huff. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. On behalf of the council, I welcome Councillor Dave Huff to his first meeting of the full council. Welcome. Please be patient with him. So I suggest no questions to be asked today, so hold them until next meeting. It's okay. Right. Moving on to agenda item 3, I propose that minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 18th of September and 23rd of October 2024 to be approved as correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to second that motion.
Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. You okay? Yes. Okay. Agenda item 4. I'm advised that no questions have been received from members of the public under Council Procedures Rule 10. Yeah. Agenda item 5, my announcements. Firstly, on the 27th of October, I attended the 150th anniversary celebration of Shaftesbury Society Schools Chapel, now called Bisley Village Hall. I would like to share this recording of the choir from the recording from the school. So if you just listen, over to you. That's it. Now that recording is about 80, 90-year-old. I thought it was really good to share it with everyone today. So actually, it was quite nice to hear everything in there. So thank you for listening to that. Moving on to my other announcement. Tomorrow is the District Council Network celebration of 130 years of women's right to stand as councillors. There will be a representative from Surrey Heath, 2 representatives from Surrey Heath attending that. The event will bring together over 150 district council leaders, councillors and chief executives. It aims to promote the crucial role of the women in local government and encourage more women to consider standing for elections. I think we got a fair bit in here. Other highlights of the last few months include I have actually done about 100 events to date. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them. You will see me on, and it's on the Mayor's Facebook, so if you ever need to see anything, or contact Helen and she'll show you the photographs. Every event was very enjoyable. Thank you. Right, moving on, agenda item 6, I would like to invite the leader, Councillor Sean MacDonald, to make his announcement.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, apologies to yourself, the officers and other members for my delayed arrival. There are 4 exit roads from Lightwater and all of them were solid red. I think I saw Councillor Noble just sneak in front of me there. So, again, apologies for that. I usually leave double the time. Maybe I should leave treble the time. Who knows? First of all, I'm deeply saddened not to have made the minute silence that I know the Mayor led earlier. If I could express my sincere condolences to the friends, family and colleagues of the deceased Surrey Heath Borough Council team member. We also remember all those grieving at this time. It's a particularly difficult time to be grieving. I'm delighted to announce that our planning policy team yesterday submitted to the Planning Inspectorate the Surrey Heath Development Plan. I would like to thank all the officers involved for their hard work, tenacity and dedication in bringing forward the local plan to submission, including actually, well, not an officer, but including my colleague here, Councillor Ashery, but especially Gavin Chinner and Jane Rees for their personal and professional leadership. We are grateful for the collaborative effort and the expertise our officers have contributed to ensure that the plan is both comprehensive and aligned with our local objectives. We now hope for a fair hearing and a successful verdict with minimal changes. I'm also really pleased to confirm that the Camberley Theatre reopened last week on time, on spec, and hopefully on budget, but we'll get Mr. Watson to give us an update on that another time, with the hugely successful Snow White pantomime. This is a significant achievement given all the challenges presented by RAC, which blights and ultimately has closed many public buildings nationally. Having personally visited the site last week briefly, it was clear the real care had gone into both the engineering solution to make things super safe for all and the general sprucing up of the public areas to provide a new vibe and a better experience for visitors. I know members will all want to thank the whole team involved, especially Darren Burgess on the technical side and Kaylee Stockley for making sure that the show goes on. Sorry, I couldn't help with that one. I wanted to mention the Surrey Police Anti-Burglary Initiative, which was conducted over the 16th of October and the 5th of December, supported by many councillors, enforcement officers from Surrey Heath and the neighbourhood watch partners. Hotspots were prioritised due to recent residential burglaries, using data taken over a 3-year period, where we have seen a recent spike in targeting of residents with a culture of valuing high-quality gold. This is the 2nd year running where Surrey Heath has supported the police colleagues through visiting residents, highlighting burglary prevention, posting information leaflets through the doors, and offering free devices such as motion alarms. The residents very much appreciated the care taken by all involved to support them, so thank you to the officers and members alike involved, not least when we look like drowned rats on the residents' doorsteps. I think Councillor Garrett's investing in a new waterproof jacket for Christmas, I understood. Over recent months, it feels like every meeting we attend incorporates difficult decisions triggered by the Council's financial situation. Our financial challenges are significant, so the Executive and our senior management team have been working closely on the Council's transformation programme, which is now underway and beginning to gather pace. This is a collaborative approach to delivering efficiencies between our managers, staff and councillors, which will hold us in good stead and ensure we make considered decisions around the shape of Surrey Heath as a council and the services it delivers into the future. On the 10th of November, the council worked with the Royal British Legion and the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst to hold a Remembrance Day event that included a range of diverse stakeholders. This was a moving and respectful ceremony, and we are very grateful to all participants, and particularly Reverend Pippa Ford from St Michael's Church, who we wish well as she moves on to new challenges as a carer. Work to implement the Armed Forces Covenant Action Plan is underway following the launch of the plan at the first Covenant meeting on the 25th of September. Quarterly update meetings will commence shortly involving our key stakeholders to allow us to stay on track and monitor progress, which will be reported at the Residents and Communities Working Group. On the 24th of October, the Council held its annual Sports Awards. I know, like me, many were inspired to read the very moving stories of the nominees and award winners. This was very much a highlight in the Surrey Heath calendar, and it was wonderful to celebrate inclusion and diversity in sport, not least with Lloyd Martin winning the key award for his Guinness World Record London Marathon running efforts. 2 weeks ago, I was privileged to open the highly successful business breakfast at Roost in Bagshot, featuring an engaging lineup of presentations on internet safety, Surrey's business decarbonisation scheme, and expertise on supporting small businesses. It was wonderful to see so many Bagshot businesses come together to network, exchange ideas, and share best practices in such a positive atmosphere, fueled by gluten-free goodies, which I very much enjoyed. As a key risk for all public bodies, I wanted to congratulate our ICT team for the successful renewal of their PSN certification on cybersecurity. Now, there's probably only a few councillors that understand what that means, but it's very important. This is a real team effort to ensure that cyber risk highlighted on our corporate risk register is mitigated. Whilst we can never remove the risk entirely, this gives a strong assurance that the likelihood of the risk being realised is comparatively low. I am pleased to report that the uptake in our digital newsletter is gaining momentum. Whilst there is still a vast amount of the community which is yet to subscribe, it is pleasing that numbers are increasing. And I would implore you all to encourage everyone you interact with to sign up. Turning to staff issues, I'm really pleased to report the following successes within our revenues, benefits and our parking teams. A level 4 apprenticeship for the revenue and welfare benefits practitioner, notice processing, City and Guilds assured, City and Guilds level 2 award for civil enforcement officers. We also have a substantial number of long-standing staff, quite a few this time, and I'm pleased to confirm that 2 customer service advisors, a network and security officer, a HR officer, a technical support officer, a revenues officer and a revenues inspector all celebrate 10 years service this winter, which is a remarkable achievement. However, not as remarkable as the 3 people that we celebrate in 20 years in January, 2 of whom joined on the same day. Thank you all for your dedicated service to the Council and our residents. We also develop offers through the Rising Stars programme, which is seeing real results. 3 staff are being supported through different projects and development opportunities, and this is bearing fruit with 1 officer presenting the workforce profile to the Employment Committee as part of their development. As we head to the end of the year, I'd like to thank all the officers for their work supporting our community, especially the senior team through a period of change and challenge, as well as all members in your efforts in this place and beyond advocating for your residents. I'm sure many are ready to take a well-deserved break all around the room. As I draw to a close, I want to thank our community partners for all they do locally, particularly at this festive time of year. As residents face into the cold headwinds of the cost of living crisis, many having to choose between heating or eating. We should also be mindful of the efforts of all key workers that keep our society functional through the festive season, be it emptying the bins, salting the roads, caring for the sick, moving the food, keeping the lights on. I've been one of these myself over the years, missing out on so much. So many thanks to those away from family and friends for periods of this festive season. Putting my community safety hat on, we know this time of year can be great for many, maybe for most of us. Bittersweet for me with a birthday and some anniversaries to navigate. However, it can also be challenging for some, especially behind closed doors, particularly for women, older adults and young people. One only needs to look at the horrific case of Zara Sharif across the border in Knaphill to recognise the importance of proactive safeguarding actions. I just want to remind everyone here and in our community to look out for the signs, support victims and signpost them to the support services that are there to help. I'm sure all members have watched with interest and astonishment the dramatic changes in Syria this week. It should be a matter of pride to the Council, members and officers alike, the work that was done accommodating refugees from Syria. some of whom have moved on to be fully integrated, and some still getting our support locally. Let's hope for a lasting peace in their homeland and in the wider Middle East, for a just peace in other places nearer to home, like Ukraine, across our local communities, and within families at this special time of year for many. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, declaration of interest. Do any members have disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest to declare in relation to the matter which are to be considered at this meeting? Councillor Rowland.
Mayor, I should report that I have been in receipt of the winter fuel allowance.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item executive committee. No, oh, sorry.
Sorry, if that's the case, then I've also been in receipt of the winter payment allowance.
Right, okay. Councillor Councillor Glout, and then Councillor Whitcroft and Councillor Wright. Okay, Mary, thank you.
I'd just like to report that I've also been had the winter fuel allowance last year.
Me too, Mayor.
Councillor Ray.
And me.
I'm old too.
Anybody else? Moving on swiftly. Moving on to agenda item 8, Executive Committee of the other bodies. Executive Minutes of Recommendation. Can I have a proposal for the executive minutes and recommendations of minutes 59E and 71E?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose the minutes of the executive of the 17th of September, the 5th and 19th of November, and the 3rd of December 2024, and recommend the minutes 59E, local community project fund bids, and 71E, the calculation and setting of the council tax base for 25-26.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you. Are you all happy to receive these minutes and agree the recommendation? Thank you. Planning Application Committee. Can I have a proposal for the Planning Application Committee minutes, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose the Planning Applications Committee minutes of the 19th of September, 30th of October, 7th of November, and 21st of November. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
I hope so.
I'd like to second those. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Thank you. Oh, so system of performance. Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee. Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee, I have been advised that the minutes of the committee's last meeting are still being drafted and will be presented to the next meeting. Can I have a proposal for the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee minutes from 6th of September and 4th of November, and the recommendation at the minutes 12 PF?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to propose those minutes as suggested by yourself.
Do you have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to second minutes and the proposal. Thank you.
Members, are you happy to receive these minutes and agree the recommendation? Thank you. Can I have a proposal for external partnership select committee meeting minutes? Sorry.
Mayor, could I just clarify on the minutes from the 10th of September? Could I just clarify, I think there's a mistake in the minutes as tabled. Could we just clarify the attendance? Because I think at the meeting last night we noted an error that needed to be corrected.
Yeah, as an error, Rachel's going to... So you're going to... Yeah. That'll be drafted, yeah.
Sorry, my apologies, I've literally just skimmed through them now, so sorry for not letting anyone know sooner.
Rob.
They're not correct. I can't propose incorrect
Subject to the
minutes.
amendments.
Subject to the amendments that were presented and approved at last night's committee, yes, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
Mayor, I'm happy to second those.
Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Audit Standards and Risk Committee. Can I have a proposal for the Audit Standards and Risk Committee meeting minutes?
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to propose the Audit Standard and Risk Committee meeting minutes of the 24th of September and more recently the 26th of November. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second these minutes.
Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Apologies if I'm mixing the minutes and the meetings and everything together. Employment Committee. I have been advised that the minutes of the committee last meeting are still being drafted and will be presented at the next meeting. Can I have a proposal for the Employment Committee minutes from 31st of October and the recommendation at minute 16 EC?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to propose that the minutes of the Employment Committee meeting on the 31st of October 2024 are received, and the recommendation at minute 21/EC is agreed. You will note, members, that the committee's recommendation for a pay award has been published as an exempt update. If you do want to discuss the numbers in the recommendation, therefore, could I ask you please that we defer it until we go into the exempt part of the meeting a little later. Mayor, thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second those. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say, I don't think that we should approve something that is exempt that we can't discuss at this point in the meeting. So can I agree with Councillor Whitcroft that that is debated later? The recommendation is not approved now, that's debated later in the meeting.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll take that on board. Licensing Committee. Can I have a proposal for the Licensing Committee minutes, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to propose the minutes of the last Licensing Committee meeting on the 27th of November.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you. Joint Staff Consultative Group. Joint Staff... Oh, sorry. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes for the Licensing Committee? That's agreed. Joint Staff Consultative Group. I have been advised that the minutes of the group's last meeting are still being drafted and will be presented to the next meeting. Can I have a proposal for these notes to be Joint Staff Consultative Group from 17th of October?
Mayor, I'm happy to propose those minutes or notes.
Do you have a seconder?
Mayor, I am happy to second those notes.
Thank you. Members, are you happy to receive these notes? Members, you will see that the two motions have been received from the evening's meeting. I will take them in the order they conclude in the agenda. I would like to ask Councillor Jonathan Quinn to move his motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor, sorry.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm aware we might need a seconder before I speak, but I'd like to propose the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Do you have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to second the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Quinn, would you like to speak to your motion?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, fellow councillors and members of the public. It's my honour to stand here tonight to propose the establishment of a ceremonial young mayor for Surrey Heath. This initiative is not just about creating a new title, it's about investing in the future and empowering young people in our borough. As many of you may know, I had the privilege of serving as Surrey Heath's one and only young mayor back between 2015 and 2016 under Mayor Joanna Potter. While it was an honour, the role at the time lacked structure and purpose, leaving me to navigate responsibilities during one of the busiest years of my life, my final GCSE year. This motion seeks to learn from that experience and create a role that is meaningful, impactful and sustainable. Since being elected to the council last May, I've had numerous conversations with former councillors, current councillors, former mayors and council officers about the proposal to create a young mayor. These discussions have shaped my motion, ensuring it builds on an understanding of what will work for Surrey Heath. Also, parts of my motion are deliberately broad, to give the power to the executive to determine many of the precise details of the scheme and how they'd like it to work in practice. There is widespread recognition that engaging young people in local governance is a challenge that we must rise to meet. This motion is a step towards achieving that goal. The young mayor role is about representation. Young people often feel disconnected from politics, unsure about how they fit into the decision-making process. A young mayor provides a visible figure to bridge that gap. It's a role that will give young people a voice in the council chamber, a champion for their concerns, and an opportunity to feel involved in the democratic process. I believe this proposal will achieve three key objectives. First, it will inspire civic engagement among 11 to 18-year-olds, encouraging them to see the council as approachable and relevant to their lives. Second, it will develop valuable leadership and communication skills for the young person chosen to serve. And finally, it will strengthen our links with schools and youth organisations, including the Youth Council, ensuring our work reaches and resonates with younger residents. I want to take a moment to address any concerns that may arise as a result of my motion. First is the question of cost. This proposal has been designed with minimal financial implications. There will be no expensive election process for a young mayor. The young mayor will be appointed annually through a nomination process involving secondary schools, a straightforward and low-cost approach. The ceremonial nature of the role means it will not require any additional staffing or significant resources. Second, I understand that time and practicality might be concerns. The young mayor's responsibilities will be mainly ceremonial and manageable, such as attending civic events, raising funds for a chosen charity, and representing young voices in council meetings. These activities have been carefully considered to ensure they fit seamlessly with our existing processes without overburdening the council or young mayor themselves. They'll fit neatly alongside our recent moves to allow public questions at council meetings. Third, there is an issue of clarity. I've ensured the motion lays out a clear and well-defined framework for the role. The young mayor will attend civic events alongside the mayor, they'll advocate for young people's concerns in the council chamber, and they will also have a chance to promote their work on the council's website. They'll also have the opportunity to participate in council meetings, offering a unique perspective that we, as decision makers, would benefit from hearing. Finally, let me address the timing. Passing the motion tonight is essential. It allows us to lay the framework to approve a young mayor for the mayor-making ceremony in May. Delaying this decision would mean losing a further year, and I believe the young people of Surrey Heath demand our commitment now. This motion is not just about civic engagement, it's about an investment in our community's future. It will develop the skills and confidence of the next generation of leaders, showing them that their voice matters. In closing, I ask for your support in passing this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Rowlands, would you like to speak on the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councils, we should remind Surrey that it has a statutory duty to provide a youth service, and it's useful that we could use this opportunity to do that. And I noticed that of the list of councils who are listed of having a active youth provision, Surrey Heath at the moment is absent from that list. At the moment, there are moves to improve the provision of the youth service, and this council, our proposal is in line with that, to raise the profile of the youth service in this borough. And it is in support of local government associations' statement in May of this year, where it's actively supporting the councils to provide this type of service for young people. Unfortunately, there is some background and there have been cuts in the provision for youth service throughout the country. But at the moment, some moves are beginning to be apparent that there should be greater spending on the youth service and a greater provision for it. And having a provision of this kind, as proposed by my colleague, would actually highlight to this council that it has a definitive interest in positively working towards the life experiences of young people in the borough of Surrey Heath and actually making adequate provision for their life. And I commend this to the council as a way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to invite the members to discuss the motion and make their comments. Okay. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst I'm happy to support this motion in principle and agree it is a wonderful idea, I have some issues with the wording of this motion that need some clarification. I appreciate the motion has got a broad outline, but there are some areas which I would like to highlight. It doesn't specify the age limit. The motion refers to young people that go to secondary school. Yet the age group of youth council encompasses 11 to 18, and in his speech, Councillor Quinn mentions 11 to 18. Point 3b states choosing the young mayor through nominations received from secondary school within Surrey Heath. But the motion does not specify that the young person has to live in Surrey Heath, only go to secondary school in Surrey Heath. Also, what about a young person who lives in Surrey Heath but goes to a school outside of Surrey Heath? So, Farnborough Tech, for instance. There is no mention at all within the motion about the need for a chaperone or following safeguarding rules. And whilst I appreciate this is to go to the executive, these are some items which I think we just need to maybe discuss and make sure we're happy with. As I say, I'm more than happy with the motion. I just have a few concerns around those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Quinn and Councillor Rowlands for submitting this motion for consideration. Along with officers, we have thoroughly examined the viability of appointing a young mayor. There are some undeniable benefits. Youth representation is very important, and hearing the youth voice is crucial for a forward-looking council such as this. To avoid overlap with the Youth Council, a young mayor would also need to be part of that, and this would create a stronger link between the Youth Council and the Borough Council. However, we also identified a number of challenges which can be summarised as follows. The current officer support for the Youth Council could be described as facilitative. Officers attend meetings with Learning Space, who are the organisation delivering the project. Future funding for the Youth Council is still being identified by Learning Space, and as such, any resource for delivering the young mayor would be an additional expenditure, whether it be resourced through a third party or internally. Engaging with schools has been a struggle for the Youth Council, so significant resource would be required in order to include the additional role of young mayor, and this would need to be done in partnership with schools, as you outlined. Officers have confirmed, and indeed I know from my own visits and discussions with Learning Space, that the young people who form the Youth Council, and indeed the young people who form the Youth Council, that the role of young mayor is not something that has been requested by them. As I'm sure you would expect, cost is a major concern. As we all know, this council's current financial position means it would be inappropriate to introduce additional discretionary responsibilities like the young mayor. Additional workload for officers would be generated, managing email, managing diaries. There would also be costs in terms of mayoral attire and reimbursement of travel expenses. Working with young people brings a very serious responsibility in terms of safeguarding. Every engagement would need to be assessed to ensure suitability. Young persons' risk assessments would need to be undertaken by the council, and the young mayor would need to be chaperoned. We simply do not have the staff resource required to fulfil these statutory obligations, particularly as many engagements would be outside of normal working hours for our officers. Now, I hope that Councillors Quinn and Rowlands know that I am passionate about ensuring good representation for all, including young people. Quite sadly, I'm no longer a young person myself, but I truly believe that young people have a lot to offer us as a council and beyond, and that is why we worked hard to re-establish the Youth Council. Unfortunately, as I alluded to earlier, significant additional resource would be required if we were to introduce a young mayor, and our financial position means that we simply cannot fund it. So it is my view that we cannot take this motion forward at present. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other members who would like to speak? Councillor Quinn, would you like to exercise your right to reply? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Councillor Cliff.
Thank you, Mayor. Like Councillor Finn and Cook, I agree it's a great idea. I have 5 grandchildren. I'm teaching one of them, as part of her Duke of Edinburgh Award, to play the guitar. Because I'm teaching her, I have been through a vetting process that takes time and money, and that's my granddaughter. And her mum is sitting in the lounge while we play in the front. If we take on a young mayor, all of us here, all of the officers that have any dealings with that person, will they need to be vetted as well? I'm with Councillor Finn and Cook. I think the expenditure at this time is not feasible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bean. Anyone else? Oh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It actually raises, I think, another point, and that is that there may be some argument whereby all of us should be DBS checked, and all of us should go through that process within our role of councillor. I know it was something that was discussed some time ago, but by the very nature of our role, we do at times have access to areas and situations that if we were not elected, we wouldn't have access to. I understand the arguments on both sides. I think it's a real pity that we're not able to move forward with it, because we had a motion in this council some time ago and universal agreement that it's something that should be done. We have falling voting numbers and a fairly disenfranchised younger population with politics or non-politics generally within the area. I do feel as though yet again we are kicking this into the long grass, and that is a pity, but I absolutely understand the restrictions that sit behind it. There is nothing stop any one of us from voluntarily requesting a DBS check. It's a relatively small cost, and we can share our DBS outcome with anyone that we choose to share the link with. And maybe that's something that each of us should search our conscience to consider, and may well make the forwarding of this motion something that would be slightly easier to do.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Anyone else? Just double checking before we start. Right. Councillor Quinn, would you like to exercise your right to reply, please?
Thank you. I have to say I'm extremely disappointed with some of the responses that I've heard this evening. I'd like to just go through what everyone said in turn. I think the first thing is that this motion is not going to outline all of the policies and everything that would have to go alongside a young mayor. It simply would commit the executive to pursue this idea in principle and develop those policies. So whether those are safeguarding policies, whether those are determining the amount of money that this will cost, whether they're, it's transport arrangements, etc., all of those things will be dealt with later and determined by the executive in line with the amount of costs or resources that this role would need. I find the debate that to have a young mayor, every councillor and every officer would need a DBS check entirely just missing the point. I don't believe that's how councils operate that have a young mayor. Lots of councils have a young mayor. They don't operate like that. As Councillor Wheeler said, we work with lots of vulnerable residents and children every day. That does not require us to have a DBS check. In terms of not tying this to the Youth Council, I think the portfolio holder said something very strange about young people in the Youth Council not wanting a youth mayor. They absolutely do. I spoke to the former chair of the Youth Council and he regarded this as very important to link the Youth Council to the actual council. And so I'm very disappointed if councillors won't support this tonight. As I said, I hope that councillors do support this motion and any of the difficulties that we've discussed can be resolved later by the executive, or if it turns out that this actually isn't feasible and we look at other councils' approaches, then that can be dealt with later down the line by the executive as well, or come back to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. I would like to move to the vote on this proposal. I would now ask a show of hands unless anyone indicates otherwise. No, nobody showing their hands. Oh. Anyone in favour, please raise your hands. Anyone against? Anyone against? Okay, thank you. Any abstentions? Okay. Right. So I have the results. 11 in favour, 15 against, 3 abstained. Okay. So therefore the motion is not carried. Thank you, Ms. Willis. Right, motion number 2. I would like to ask Councillor Johnny Cope to move his motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion as written in the order paper.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cope. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Cope, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. 2.5 million pensioners. That is the number of people that Age UK estimate will be in, quote, serious trouble this winter as a result of losing their winter fuel allowance. The decision taken by the Labour government to push so many people in our country into fuel poverty is wrong, it is unnecessary, and it is cruel. And as the leader touched upon in his opening remarks, it will lead to choices between heating and eating. Now, the government claims that those most in need will be protected, but that is simply not the case. The government's definition of those most in need is those receiving pension credit. But that is of no help to those on low incomes who just miss out on being eligible for pension credit. It is of no help to those with unavoidably high heating bills due to illness or disability. And it is of no help to the nearly 1 million people in the UK who do not receive pension credit, even though they are entitled to it. The most vulnerable in our society will suffer, they are suffering, and many of them live right here in Surrey Heath. So let's be fair. Why has the government done this? Well, the line peddled by Rachel Reeves and co is that it will save money. They claim £1.3 billion of savings in 2024-25, rising to £1.5 billion in 2029-30. It's a lot of money. But let's actually dive into those figures and see how true they are. The Office for Budget Responsibility estimates that the number of people claiming pension credit will have increased by 5% as a result of these changes by the end of this year. Those are people who were previously eligible for pension credit but did not claim it for whatever reason. On current trends of people signing up, that'll be 158,000 people by the end of the year. If that's the case, the overall savings in 2024-25 fall to 300 million, not 1.3 billion, 300 million. But that's not actually where it ends. As once a person is claiming pension credit, that opens up an ability to claim further benefits. And there are estimates that that could cost the Treasury up to 700 million. There is no evidence that this measure will save money at all. It is therefore clear that despite what it may say on her CV, the Chancellor is no economist, and her measures in respect of these claimed savings do not add up. And even if we are generous, let's be generous, and accept that 300 million figure, which is on current trends is the most the Treasury can expect to save. It pales into insignificance in comparison to the £9.4 billion Labour has spent placating public sector unions, or the £4.7 billion per year this government is committed to spending on a very vague green prosperity plan. Governing is about choices, and make absolutely no mistake. This government has chosen to spend money on one area and cut the winter fuel allowance. I think they've done that in part because they overestimated the savings, but I think they've also done it to try to exaggerate the economic legacy left to them by the previous government. They are playing politics, and people in our communities will suffer. Now, as a council, we have to be a voice for our residents and stand up for them when the government gets something wrong, as they so clearly have with this decision. And to my Labour friends, I would say, trust me, I know what it's like to be a member of a governing party when they make a mistake. It's not easy, but you have to own up to it. Now, the Chancellor has already doubled down on this decision, and I know that a motion passed in Surrey Heath Borough Council is not going to change that. But it would be a strong and powerful message to our communities if we could pass this motion on a cross-party basis. We also need to work hard to maintain awareness of the need to register for pension credit so that those eligible are still able to receive this benefit. It won't help everyone who needs it, but it is all we can do. And I know from conversations with many of you and discussions that have happened in this chamber in recent weeks that many councils are already doing great work in their communities to encourage pension credit uptake. So thank you for all you're already doing. And I hope you will take this next step and support this motion, which is an important thing for us to do to show our commitment to pensioners here in Surrey Heath. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Councillor White, would you like to speak?
First of all, I'd like to apologise for my lateness tonight, something that's never, ever happened in all the years that I've been a councillor, and I do apologise. I took a shortcut, which just goes to prove that shortcuts don't work. I've also left my notes at home, and following on from the shortcut, I think this government has made a shortcut with this removing of the fuel allowance. Sorry, I've lost my mojo already. We've had a debate already tonight on the youth of Surrey Heath. I think we should have just as good a debate on the older generation in Surrey Heath as well. I'm one of those older generations. I'm fortunate, though, that I have a husband that still works. I don't have to claim pension credits, so therefore I don't get my fuel allowance this year. Not so. One of the reasons I was late as well is somebody came up and knocked on my door tonight to thank me for something that I'd done for them in the village. While we were talking, and which is why I was late, she also thanked me for something that we do at James Butler Almshouses, which is give a fuel allowance. And this month, I have written out 77 cheques for people in Bagshot, Lightwater and Windlesham with money to help towards their fuel for the winter. She then went to great pains to tell me how much she actually got from her pension and from a pension from a previous job. And she's like that. She must be about £20 below the limit, but she doesn't get the fuel allowance anymore. So I said I would help her fill out the form for pension credit. Oh, no, I can't do that, she said. I don't want to be seen to be begging. That really upset me. And again, that's one of the reasons why I was late, but then it was the shortcut that really got me. So I don't speak as eloquently as Johnny does, and I do apologise for that, but I am passionate about this particular issue, and I think it should be looked at again. And as Johnny said, sorry, Councillor Cope, I do apologise. A letter from Surrey Heath Borough Council isn't going to change people's opinion, but if we publish that letter, at least the residents of Surrey Heath will know that we are trying to deal with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Well said. And you, believe me, you weren't the only one who was late. I think there's something going on the M23, M3. I would like to invite members to discuss the motion and make any comments, please. Councillor Queen.
Madam Mayor, I wish to address this motion that, while well-intentioned, is both factually flawed and politically misdirected. I want to begin by acknowledging the very real challenges that will be facing many pensioners in Surrey Heath this winter. Rising costs, especially for essentials like heating, have left many older people struggling. No one in this chamber should underestimate the importance of supporting vulnerable residents through these difficult times. However, this motion misses the mark and risks spreading confusion rather than clarity. Let me start with the facts. Firstly, when the proposer stood up and spoke, he asserted that the winter fuel payment has been restricted solely to those on pension credit. I'd like to correct him, that's not actually the case. Those claiming a wide range of means-tested benefits will still receive the winter fuel payment if they're of pension age. This includes people claiming universal credit, employment and support allowance and income support, obviously providing their pensioners. Misinformation around this issue risks causing unnecessary fear, particularly among pensioners who are already anxious about making ends meet. I was particularly disappointed on this topic to see election leaflets from opposing parties during the Old Dean by-election that claimed the winter fuel payment was being withdrawn without mentioning that many pensioners will still receive this benefit or remain eligible for it. This was misleading and frankly irresponsible, and it risked distressing the very vulnerable people that we're all here to help. We also cannot ignore the context in which this policy decision was made. The Labour government inherited a disastrous fiscal legacy from the Conservatives, an almost £22 billion black hole this financial year that left the incoming Chancellor with some of the most difficult decisions any government has faced in decades. In this context, we had to prioritise targeting resources to those who need them most. Means testing the winter fuel payment was not an easy decision, but it was necessary to ensure limited resources go to pensioners who are genuinely struggling. Let's also talk about fairness. Should we continue to give the winter fuel payments to the wealthiest pensioners, those with significant assets and incomes, including millionaires, while asking low and middle income taxpayers to foot the tax bill? I'd really like the proposer, when he sums up this debate, to say where he thinks the threshold should be on claiming this allowance. Does he have a straightforward answer to this? On the issue of benefit uptake, I wholeheartedly agree that pensioners miss out on the support they're entitled to, often due to stigma or the complex application process that was left behind by the Conservatives. That's why the Labour government is rolling out an awareness campaign to boost pension credit claims, and this council should champion similar initiatives. But let's go further. It's not just about claiming pension credit. We want everyone who's entitled to some means-tested benefit to claim the help that they can get. Finally, let me address the Age UK petition. While I share Age UK's commitment in protecting vulnerable pensioners, the petition itself is outdated and factually incorrect. It fails to acknowledge the additional support provided through the expanded Household Support Fund, a measure designed to address immediate challenges caused by this transition. Signing an inaccurate petition would undermine the Council's credibility and our duty to provide honest and transparent leadership. In conclusion, while I share the motion's concern for pensioners, I cannot support it as it is written because it is factually flawed. It also fails to engage with the financial reality we face as a nation. The Council should focus on practical, immediate solutions, such as helping pensioners claim pension credit if they're entitled to it, rather than engaging in political point scoring with the new government. Madam Mayor, I urge fellow councillors to reject this motion and work together on a more honest and compassionate approach to tackling fuel poverty.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Anyone else? Oh, yes. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment to the motion. Am I able to distribute my proposed amendment to members?
Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Mayor.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Been done. They're ahead of us. Right, I'm just going to give you a few minutes to read it, and it's also gone on to. We're going to try to send it out to the public, to the councillors online. Just going to give you one more minute. So start reading fast, please. Right. Sorry. Everybody done? Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Mayor. Whilst I am in broad agreement with the sentiments expressed in the motion put forward by Councillor Cope, particularly around protecting the most vulnerable people in our society and ensuring that no one is faced with the choice between eating and heating, I do not believe that the motion as presented entirely covers the whole panacea of reasons for pensioners finding themselves in this situation. Pensioner poverty is not caused by a one-off event like the withdrawal of the winter fuel allowance, although the withdrawal of this benefit clearly doesn't help. The cost of living crisis that pensioners, like the rest of us, are still continuing to live through is the result of a myriad of events, including Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the disastrous mini-budget of September 2022. Further, I feel that the efforts of council officers in reaching out to the most vulnerable residents in our borough and working with our third sector partners to ensure that those entitled to pension credit are applying for it are not sufficiently acknowledged in the original motion and should be made more explicit. And I would also like to add my thanks to those members in this chamber who are this week knocking on the doors to reach the most vulnerable pensioners who are not yet in receipt of pension credit and encouraging them to get their applications in before the deadline so that they do not lose that winter allowance. That, for me, is what we should be doing as members, not trying to overly politicise this issue. We should be helping the people that we are here to represent. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby.
I have nothing to add to Councillor Ashbury's comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions or debate on the recommendation? Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. The irony that this motion is being proposed by the Conservatives will not have been lost on you, Mayor. It was the Conservative government that created the cost of living crisis, which has led to the poverty and deprivation that affects so many pensioners in our borough. When Liz Truss crashed the economy with her unfunded tax cuts for the wealthiest, she sent the prices of essentials rocketing the most, including food, gas and electricity. Their policies, including Brexit, crashed the pound and made imported goods more expensive. Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron banned new onshore wind turbines, preferring to leave the UK dependent on imported fossil fuels, including cheap Russian gas. Well, it's not cheap anymore. In fact, it's not even available. It was their reckless management of public finances that led to the cost of living crisis and the black hole that the new government has to fill. However, removing the winter fuel payment from all pensioners except those receiving pension credit and a few other benefits is a false economy because it will cause hardship to people just above the threshold to qualify. Of course, it is reasonable to remove it from wealthy pensioners who do not need it, and the government should change its means testing to achieve that. Poverty anywhere in society harms all of society. Pensioners left in hardship by this change cannot be the full members of their communities and happy, healthy family members they currently are. There is a cost to this harm, and it exceeds the saving by cutting the winter fuel payments. In the same way, keeping the Conservative two-child cap on universal credit and tax credits causes harm at the other end of the age spectrum. The cost of that harm, having more children grow up in poverty, exceeds the cost of lifting the cap. I happen to know that people do not join the Labour Party to increase deprivation and poverty, but the new government seems to think that these austerity measures will reassure bond markets. In reality, the future of the country rests on removing poverty and allowing everyone to take part in society. I support this amendment and I hope it's agreed by the Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the comment of both Councillor Wilson and Councillor Asprey, but I think the logic in associating that with the motion before us is a grave mistake. As many of us probably have been doing, have been working with BSOM in the community and doing work to provide sustenance at Christmas for the bulk of many people in this population. And that is not, as I think Councillor Asprey is indicating, solely or the responsibility of this particular item. However, it's been fabricated. The causes of the poverty are far deeper and far more profound. So it misses the point to actually home in on this particular item as being the cause for a great deal of unhappiness and a desperate situation for some families or some older people in the community. So that would be my reservation, that the issue of these deprivation that these people face is not the sole factor involved in the problems that they're facing. The issue is the problem of poorer families in our community, and it's quite remarkable when you look at the work of BSOM, the number and the amount of work that has to be done to support these people, and to just locate it as the cause of this one factor is a principal mistake. So the point I would make is that this is not solely due to the cuts that are being talked about. This is due to an innate problem with many people in this community facing as far as their situation is as we approach Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Anybody else? Councillor MacDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to recognise the work that the council officers have done in this area. I know it's something that the Chief Executive in particular feels very strongly about, and he and the rest of the team have been supporting since I've just looked up the middle of October. I think we first started corresponding on this matter in terms of how could we support the most vulnerable in our borough. I think the second thing I'd like to add is thanks to Mr. Watson and his team, particularly Daniel Preston, for the efforts that he's put in to work this through and to make sure that we try and get that information to the people that need it. Means-tested benefits are incredibly tough. I don't know if anybody's actually tried to fill out the calculator. I pretended I was my mother, who, by the way, dead a couple of years, to see how far I could get. It was extremely complicated. And that is the calculator that the Labour government, who is supposed to be supporting the poor and the most vulnerable in our society, is signposting them to in order to access pension credits, in order to access a winter fuel payment. I think it's a shameful state of affairs, to be honest with you. And I'm hoping at some point they will see the light. Universal benefits are there for a particular reason. They are to make sure that people don't slip through the cracks. Now, I have knocked on some doors in the last few days of people. There is about 38 currently that we think are eligible. I've knocked on a couple of doors this week. A couple were out, that's normal. We all know that from canvassing. One had applied, but was £17 over the limit, £17 over the limit, so is losing not just the pension credit, but losing the winter fuel payment as well. Another one, I have to say, was extremely vulnerable. I think, Councillor Wheeler made a point earlier around DBS checking. For the record, I'm DBS'd up to the hilt and have been for, feels like a gazillion years, and rightly so. But extremely vulnerable person, actually mistook me for a beggar, which I think some members might find moderately amusing, and wanted to give me £25. I should really have taken it and given to Mr. Watson for our deficit. But but this was the middle of the afternoon. This person was still in their, let's call a spade, their nightwear. Their partner was in bed because sick and poorly, and they had still not applied for the pension credit they were due and the winter fuel payment they were due. These are the people that are being excluded through this Labour Party policy. However, as Councillor Wilson said, for the Conservatives to raise a motion on this matter is unbelievable. They have driven these people into this state in terms of their approach to the cost of living crisis, in terms of them playing Las Vegas casino style with our country's finances. And they too should be ashamed, not just of where they've taken the most vulnerable people in our society, but in raising this motion tonight. I will be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett, and then Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, as always in this chamber, I am more than happy to support the officers and all the hard work they do. I've never made a secret of that fact. I think I've said it in this chamber many times. It will be on recordings. I'm more than happy to support the team. Obviously, the Revs and Ben's team will do a sterling job, as do the Community Development Managers team. We mentioned cash in this amendment, which it would have been nice to get at least, bearing in mind the motion went out a week ago, it would have been nice to get it without the ink being wet. So we could have actually had a look at it and actually maybe come up with some alternatives and work together. But anyway, citizen advice, brilliant job the citizen advice do. Hopefully we'll still be able to support them next year, even under the climate we find ourselves in. They work on the Household Support Fund scheme, and they have been since it was launched quite a few years ago now. And I know that previously they would have concentrated on the pension age residents. So I'm assuming that was already going on. May not be, but I see that that's been mentioned as something we can make sure they do. The 38 is actually, it sounds like quite a low number, so I'm assuming that's the most vulnerable. I don't know what the total number was in the first place. And it does say thanks to selected members. I wasn't asked if I would like to knock on doors. Maybe that would have given us an idea that we were going to get this motion and we didn't want to see that amendment. I would have happily knocked on doors of the residents within my ward or outside of my ward, because this is something I feel quite strongly about. So it brings me to my last point. I think the residents of Surrey Heath made their decision, whatever that decision was in 2023. But I think the residents of Surrey Heath would like us to work together. And regularly within this chamber, we hear ourselves backbiting, sniping, picking on each other for whatever has happened in the past, okay? I think the residents of Surrey Heath now would like us to work together as a team to do something for them, okay? What we're trying to do here is trying to say that Surrey Heath cares and we want to try and support you. Whatever happened nationally, this is locally, and we are trying to make a point that we want to support the residents of Surrey Heath. And unfortunately, in this chamber, on a regular basis, all I hear is snipe, snipe, snipe. Conservatives this, Conservatives that, okay? I've had enough of it, okay? I didn't come here to do this. I came here, I got voted in to support my residents. We are not doing that by continually backbiting in this chamber, and I've had enough of it, okay? Thank you very much, Mayor. I apologise for my outburst, and I will now sit down.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. We touched on the election literature. I spoke to hundreds of residents in Old Dean Ward, and they were angry. They were angry with the Conservatives for the way they'd crashed the economy, and that is the residents telling us that, Sean. In terms of the winter fuel payments, they were angry about that, and they were angry, some of them left on the breadline and pushed further into poverty. That's a statement of fact. I think we understand a line needs to be drawn in terms of where the winter fuel payment is paid. You know, a billionaire does not need it, but it's where that line's drawn. I'll take you on a little journey of my own finances. I paid a little bit too much tax last year, And the government wrote to me and told me, Mr. Lee, you've paid a little bit too much tax. If you write back to us, we'll give you a cheque and give you it back. Why the hell can't they do the same for pensioners? How difficult is it to identify the people that need this money and give it to them? For benefits, why is it so difficult? I'm sure we'll hear a whole load of whataboutery about how difficult it is, but can't we just crack on and stop moaning about it and actually get to the point where if you need a benefit, you get it? Rather than this kind of, well, if we make it a little bit difficult, and this is Conservative governments and Labour governments have repeatedly done this, so they've had an opportunity to fix it. And these are the residents, Sean, who are complaining about this. They're the ones in hardship that actually want it sorted out. Why can't it just be done in this modern day and age? It doesn't need AI. It didn't take AI to tell me I'd paid too much tax. I just got a little letter through. They've got my bank account anyway because they're taking the tax off me. Why can't they just give it to the pensioners automatically?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Anybody else would like to speak? Oh, Councillor Queen.
Just to check, Madam Mayor, I did speak previously, but I spoke on the original motion, not since the amendment's been proposed. Just to say, I think the amended motion is a lot better. I'd agree with 90% of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't mention the other benefits that would still entitle someone to winter fuel allowance apart from pension credit. And I think it's really important because we heard from the proponent of this debate, we've heard from the media, that only if you're in receipt of pension credit will you still get the winter fuel allowance. So I wouldn't be able to support it because it needs to include, I think, the list of the other benefits that would entitle you to the winter fuel allowance. Apart from that, I would agree that the amended motion is a lot better, and I thank officers' work and councillors' work in helping residents claim this benefit.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Whitcomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to make two very brief points, if I may. Based on my experience of sitting on this council, I heard Councillor Garrett's impassioned plea about mudslinging and whatever, and I have a lot of sympathy with the points that he makes, as I often do with the points that he makes. But it's worth noting that the actual original motion begins with the words, the Labour government's recent decision to restrict the winter fuel payment to pensioners. So that's not really anybody else but the Conservative group introducing a direct political reference. And there's certainly motive phrases used within the original motion. Badly need the money to stay warm this winter. Heat or eat dilemmas. This is direct political appeal. So it's worth making the point that if the Conservative group feel that things get out of hand politically in this chamber too much, then perhaps they could consider that when they're writing their motions. The second point that I would make, based on my vast experience, which everybody knows I have, and I never tire of talking about, is that for many, many years, another Liberal Democrat group on this council used to put forward motions. And there were probably 50 or 60 of those put in while I was the leader of the opposition at that time. Almost invariably, those motions were amended by the Conservative majority group at that time, almost without exception. And equally without exception, we as an opposition group did not get any notice of those amendments. So there might be a case, I suppose, for group leaders to get together and talk about that kind of thing. But it's just worth bearing in mind that there are cases of the pot calling the kettle black, and I think we might have had a couple of those this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wheeler?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's really nice sitting in a non-political position and being battered from side to side as we bounce around the chamber. Might I suggest a very small amendment to the amendment? So might I suggest that we remove the word Labour and just put in, let it read, the government, and that we put a full stop under the amendment IV after OBR, and we delete arising from the financial mismanagement of. My reason for that is because the way in which it's written, I think it links to say that the Office for Budget Responsibility made a statement to say that where we are is down to financial mismanagement. And I don't believe they did. If I'm wrong on that, then I'm very happy to be corrected on it. And I think that with that amendment, it is likely certainly to get my support with those two small amendments. If I need a seconder for those amendments, then I believe that I have one. Absolutely.
Just on a point of order, it's my understanding that while we're debating an amendment as a substantive debate, there can be no amendments to that amendment. So therefore, the amendment that we are currently debating would need to be voted on before we can move to a further amendment, which I am not standing up to disagree with Councillor Wheeler. I'm just wondering if I could just get clarification on the procedure.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Rice, just give me 2 seconds, please, yeah? Right. Okay, I've got the answer. Councillor Wheeler? Sorry. It was your amendment. Right, so we're going to vote on the amendment, and then if that falls, then add the amendment to the amendment. Yeah.
I hope people will support me then.
Okay. Does anybody else want to speak on the amendment before we?
Councillor Cook gets a right to reply.
No. Okay.
Until then, does anyone else wish to speak?
Okay, just hold. Does anybody else want to speak before Councillor Cope has a right to reply? Right.
Thank you. I'm a little surprised by the reaction of the Liberal Democrat group, particularly to the wording of this amendment, because every word within this motion has been passed by a number of Liberal Democrat councils. So it is not a shameful motion. It is not a political motion unless their own councils are also being political. Indeed, Ed Davies' own council in Kingston, every single Liberal Democrat on that council voted for this motion. So it's not a shameful motion. You may disagree with it. You may want to amend it. But it is quite ridiculous for you to have a pop at me for bringing a motion that has been supported by your own leaders' council. I also, in terms of the amendment itself, I think there is some good stuff in here, particularly towards the end in what the council is resolving to do. I agree with Councillor Ashbury that we should absolutely acknowledge the great work that is already being done in this area by this council. And I really want to help this pass cross-party. But if we're going to do that, it's not going to be with wording around the OBR making a statement that the decision to scrap the entitlement is as a result of financial mismanagement. The OBR did not say that. The OBR does not make political statements like that. So we cannot have that in this motion. if it is going to pass on a cross-party basis. But in terms of the rest of the amendment, I am okay with it. I'm surprised that there are only 38 potentially eligible pension credit, and I would like at some point, potentially during this debate, potentially afterwards, where that number's come from and how we know that would be really useful information to have. So I will be voting against this amendment. I cannot accept it as drafted, but I suspect that if we were to make the amends that Councillor Wheeler has suggested she is going to bring, I may well be able to support the amended motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. Right. Thank you. I would like to move to the vote on the amendment, please. Please show us your hands in favour of the amendment, please. Against? Thank you. And abstain? 3, 4.
I'm sitting here with difficulty. I used to get the winter fuel allowance, and I'm one of the ones that don't get the winter fuel allowance. So how does that leave me?
Sorry, we've moved.
Well, how does that leave me? You know, have I got a financial interest? Because I'd like the winter fuel allowance back.
I think everybody announced it at the beginning.
I don't get it.
Oh, okay.
I did, but this year for some reason, I don't get it.
Sorry, so I've got the vote results now. Right, we got that for the amendment 19-4, 6 against, and 4 abstentions. Oh, sorry. So therefore, I declare the vote is carried. Right, so that's the amendment, which becomes, sorry, which comes this is, right. So is there anything else I need to do? Right. This, sorry. Right. Right. Governance Working Group, agenda, oh, sorry. Wrong information. Right. Now, Councillor Wheeler, you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm so sorry for the confusion. As everybody knows, I do normally swallow the Constitution and understand it very well. So my understanding of that was if that motion passed, it was the motion, and I couldn't then do a further amendment. So thank you for the clarity on that. So I will reiterate that I would like to amend this what is now the substantive motion to say to delete in point I the word Labour in front of governments and to put a full stop in IV after OBR and delete arising from until the current full stop. The reason being that the IV is, in my mind, the way in which it reads, however we feel about it, slightly factually inaccurate because it reads as though the OBR is endorsing that opinion. And as I said, having looked, I can't see where it does. And I believe I do have a seconder for that amendment, but it does look as though there's ongoing discussion. So I'll sit down and be quiet.
Do you have a seconder?
I'd second that motion, Madam Chairman, providing I'm able to do so. That's why I asked the question.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Then I second that motion.
Right.
No.
I think the amendment proposed by Victoria is reasonable. Councillor Wheeler is reasonable.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
I also think the amendment's reasonable. I do challenge the point. I think we're reading it, choosing to read it a certain way. That I don't think it was the amendment was meant to suggest that the OBR had specifically expressed an opinion. I would say you could even amend it to say that the large budget gap was inherited, which was confirmed by the OBR, arising from what we consider financial mismanagement of the previous government. I think it's more opinion of this council rather than an opinion of the OBR.
Quinn?
I'm afraid I don't agree with this amendment. The proposer is suggesting removing the word Labour from Labour government is making it more neutral. I don't think that's necessary. We all know the government's Labour. And about removing the point about the OBR, it's almost like we want to, the council's trying to forget, if they accept this motion, about the horrendous mess that the Conservatives left the economy in, especially after Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. And the OBR has in fact confirmed that since Labour got into office, that there was financial mismanagement before the period of the election. So I'll be opposing this amendment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody else? Right, Councillor Cope, you have another right to reply.
Go on. Even I'm running out of things to say at this stage, and people will know that that is quite surprising. I am supportive of this amendment. I go back to something that I said in my opening remarks. I think it would be a really powerful statement if we were able to pass this motion on a cross-party basis, at least with the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives. I understand that Labour councillors may find it difficult to vote for this motion, but I'm hoping that we can do that, and this amendment would allow me to vote for it. I can't see any reason to refer to the previous government in this motion other than as a political attempt to embarrass the Conservative Party. And I would remind Liberal Democrat members that their colleagues in Kingston and around the country have already passed a motion worded identically to the one I brought at the beginning. So I would really ask them to consider supporting this amendment so we can send that powerful cross-party message.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Anybody else? Oh.
Just as a point of order, Councillor Cope said it's like, just as a point of order, Councillor Cope said it's identical to the motion that was passed in Kingston. Could you confirm the meeting that this identical motion
Councillor
was
Lee,
passed
we've
at, please?
passed the debate now. Thank you. Thank you.
I believe it was in an October Kingston meeting. It is not identical because our word limit is different. So I submitted to the Chief Executive a copy of that motion, well, worded similarly, but obviously with the words Kingston and Surrey Heath, etc., interchanged. But I did have to delete certain paragraphs in order to fall below 350 words to present it to this.
Thank you.
So it's not identical.
Okay. Can we stay within Surrey Heath, please? Thank you. I'm going to go to a vote. I would like to move the vote to Councillor Wheeler's amendment now. So can I have a show of hands, please, for? Now against, please. Oh. And now abstain. I've got the results. Thank you. So 4 is 7 Against 16. Abstained 6. So therefore, the amendment is not carried. Not carried. Okay, so the motion stands as the amendment by Councillor Ashbury. Councillor Lee, did you want to... Councillor Rice, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that is the first time I've ever been mistaken for Councillor Lee, so I hope it doesn't catch on. I do just want to say a few words just as we bring this debate to a close. Like Councillor Garrett, while many of us here are elected along on a party line, sometimes I find the political infighting can be quite disappointing and almost unproductive. However, I do just want to make the point that in responses from Councillor Cope this evening, he has made political attacks and made political innuendo. So I think if we're going to be lectured by the Conservative group about not political infighting and political backbiting...
Sorry, Councillor Rice.
I am speaking about them. I will...
Can we please keep that with the leaders afterwards, if they wanted to discuss this? So
the point I'm trying to make is that I think we have been distracted by the actual motion that was brought forward, with laudable intentions by Councillor Cope, I think, and I think the motion, as now amended, is a much clearer motion. Our focus in this discussion this evening needed to be about the residents that we serve and the vulnerable residents that we serve, rather than arguing about which political party got us in the mess, which government has done this, which government has done that. We need to focus on what we are doing for our residents, which is why I'm very pleased that the amendment passed, because it makes direct contribution to now what the council is and has been doing. So I want to add my thanks to officers and to our local community who does incredible work. That should be our focus, not scoring political points on the backs of older people.
Thank you, Councillor Rice, and I do totally agree with you. I echo that, so that we do need to concentrate on our residents and Surrey Heath. So, thank you. Moving on swiftly, agenda item 10. That was it? Oh. Sorry. Is it now? Right. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Councillor MacDonald, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I think, as a number of people have alluded to, the intention of trying to make sure that the vulnerable people in our community get access to the benefits they're due is something we all share. So I think we can definitely build bridges on that point. I think what we have been doing as administration and as I commented on earlier, is trying to focus on actions, and that's what we've been doing since the middle of October, as I said earlier. And there has been great work done to make sure that as many people as possible were informed about the changes and the potential actions they could take. And that really is the answer to your question. I can't remember who it came from, Councillor Cope or Councillor Garrett, as to why the number is now quite small, is because of the effectiveness of those actions. So there have been direct targeted letters gone to residents. Obviously, there's been a lot of work with Citizens Advice Bureau, who everybody gets pointed to. Sorry, I keep forgetting they're not called that anymore, but you know what I mean. So really great thanks to them, and also great thanks to the officers that have been coordinating with them. So in seeking to amend the motion, yes, we felt there should be a bit of balance because it had been set up in a political way. And as I said before, some of the root causes lie elsewhere. But the second thing, there was no point asking the officers to do things they'd already done, to be honest, because that's just creating noise in the machine that we definitely don't need at this time. So hopefully all members are able to support the fact that great action has been taken to try to make sure people get the support they're due. And the remaining few will be mopped up in the next week or so to try and make sure that that last chance to get in before the deadline on the 21st of December is taken. And I'm sure everybody has a commitment to do their bit in that journey as best they can. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Have I missed anybody else out? Thank you. Councillor Cope, you have one more go to speak.
Thank you. I promise that I will not speak this often in a council meeting. I'm not sure whether I'll keep that promise, but I will promise it. I think it's a pity that Councillor Wheeler's amendment was rejected, which would have allowed me to support the amended motion. I completely agree with what the leader has said on the great work that's already being done, both by officers, by councillors, and by many of our voluntary groups to raise awareness around the need to sign up for pension credit. I think there's been a lot of sort of political barbs going on, and I think that's slightly unfortunate. I'm getting a bit mixed messages from the Liberal Democrat group because the leader said it was shameful that I brought the motion and the deputy leader said I brought it with laudable intentions. So I'm going to go with the deputy leader's view. I'm very thank you for that, Councillor Rice. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to abstain on the motion because clearly I'm not going to vote for something that blames this entirely on financial mismanagement by the previous government, when I don't think that's true. The previous government clearly made mistakes, but I think that this is a political decision by the Labour Party about where they want to spend money and about how they want to present the inheritance that they've received. So it's a pity I can't support the amended motion, but I think we've had a good debate, and thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Okay, now anybody else? No. Right, this is it now. We're finally going to do the vote on the amendment of Councillor Ashbury. Can I have hands for the amendment, please? Okay, I have the results. Okay, so for the results are for the amendment of Councillor Ashbury, 19 for, 10 abstentions, no against. So therefore, the amendment is carried. That's it. Can I move to agenda 10 now? Yeah? Thank you. Nobody else is going to go back to it, are they?
No, that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Cope, have you got any more words to say? Your book's full now. Right, okay. Moving on, agenda 10, item 10, I would like to invite Councillor Richard Wilson to introduce a report of the Governors' Working Group to move the recommendation therein. Councillor Wilson, would you like to introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose this item and reserve my right to speak after it's been seconded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Do you have any comments, members? Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to pay tribute to the members and officers of the Governance Working Group for working diligently and impartially throughout 2024. The disruption caused by 3 elections means we have a backlog of recommendations to Council today. Firstly, we recommend changes to the scheme of delegation of functions to officers and the terms of reference of the Employment Committee in the Constitution in order to permit the Chief Executive to approve changes to existing HR policies where there is no cost involved. At the moment, these recommendations made by the Joint Staff Consultative Group go to the Employment Committee. This recommendation was requested by the Employment Committee and the Joint Staff Consultative Group. It will reduce duplication of work and help improve efficiency in the Council. It is one example of the peace dividend that is now available to the Council now that there is political stability. The detail of the recommendation in Annex B has been slightly revised due to consensus of the last Employment Committee meeting specifically to exclude changes only affecting senior management. Secondly, we recommend changes to the scheme of delegation and the budget and policy framework rules in the Constitution to balance the need to allow urgent decisions to be taken with the risk of hasty decisions going wrong. To an extent, this is closing the stable door after the horse has bolted. In 2016, the previous administration made or allowed to be made reckless financial decisions. It seems they acted unconstitutionally in purchasing the House of Fraser building, which now stands empty while the taxpayer funds asbestos removal. These unwise decisions left the Council facing existential financial challenges. These changes improve the clarity and accountability without preventing or delaying urgent action, which could be necessary to prevent financial loss or harm to people. Hopefully, in future, the Council will eventually have another horse in its stable. Future generations of councillors would not thank us if we did not learn from the mistakes of 2016 and embed these measures in the Constitution. Thirdly, we recommend removing the civic and ceremonial protocol from documents which support the Constitution and adding a little more information to Article 5 in the Constitution regarding the role of the Mayor. This is another part of the peace dividend available due to political stability. It reduces red tape and brings us in line with other borough councils. Over the years, attitudes change, language changes, even traditions change. Rather than continually revising the protocol, our worshipful Mayor can be the figurehead and first citizen that the Council of the day expects. These 3 recommendations are small changes to help with the democratic running of the Council. However, one recommendation we felt we did not have a consensus to make was on the Government's consultation on remote attendance and proxy voting at Council meetings. If the Council had the authority to hold meetings remotely, it could help transform accessibility and democratic costs. Technology has advanced enough to make it possible to hold this meeting remotely. This would save the cost and carbon emissions of the Chamber and all of our long, painful commutes this evening. Even more importantly, it would open up being a councillor to many more people with disabilities, caring responsibilities or demanding jobs. Councillors, please see it as your duty to fill it in the government survey linked to in the agenda pack. And members of the public watching, please also fill it in and share your views to help modernise our system of local democracy. Thank you again to everyone involved in the Governance Working Group for producing these recommendations. I hope the Council will support them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor
Thank you, Mayor. I think probably members and possibly members of the public as well are tired of hearing my voice tonight, so I'll be very brief. Firstly, just to confirm, Councillor Cope, I have done the age concern petition that we mentioned earlier. And the second thing is I have already done my own feedback concerning the changes that Councillor Wilson just advised. I think it's very important, and I know there are different views on this. We had a discussion within the group leaders. I think it is very important that we try and make it much more accessible. Democracy should be accessible to people. It should, anybody should be able to participate in it. And we need to make sure the rules accommodate that in a flexible way, whilst also acknowledging the fact that these set-piece events are also important from time to time. So I support the report as it stands and look forward to hearing members' comments.
Thank you, Councillor McNaught. Do you have any comments, members? Okay. If there's no... okay, is that agreed, members? Agreed. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Right, moving on to item 11. I would like to invite the Elections Registration Officer to present a report on the polling district and polling place review.
Thank you, Mayor. The report before you outlines the polling districts and polling places, which has been undertaken in line with the statutory requirements following the last review in 2019. The changes proposed within the report relate to Watchetts, Town and St Paul wards, where the changes to the polling districts are as a result of the revised County Council division boundaries. These allow us to merge some polling districts where division boundaries are now coterminous with the borough wards. There is also a requirement to create 2 polling districts in Frimley to recognise that the eastern part of the ward will now be in Heatherside and Parkside County Division. The western part of the ward remaining in Camberley West and Frimley Division. In relation to polling stations, options were considered for the new Frimley East polling district. However, in the absence of other choices, we propose to allocate St Peter's Church Hall as the polling place, particularly as electors are already familiar with voting there. In Frimley Green South, we're proposing to officially move the polling place to Frimley Green Club, which has successfully been used for a number of elections. This will also avoid any disruption to educational activities at the current official polling place at Frimley Green Youth Centre. In St Michael's East, due to the Adult Education Centre being proposed as a potential housing development in the newly submitted local plan, alternatives were sought. However, in the absence of any clear alternatives, we propose to continue to use the Adult Education Centre for the immediate future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Stevens. I would like to invite comments on the report and ask for members to move a motion in respect of this report. Once you've moved the motion, I will invite a seconder and then you will each have a right to speak. Councillor McDonald.
I'm happy to move the motion, but would like to reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Councillor MacDonald, do you wish to speak to you on your motion?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, just to thank the Head of Democratic Services for and the Electoral, I've forgotten the formal title, Officer, for their work on this report. It's very clear. I am in favour of us looking at consolidation, and I think the report mentions Valley End as one of those. I think I must apologise to the Head of Democratic Services. I've been to hell and back, well, to be more exact, Leatherhead, and we didn't manage to have a chat that we had been planning before this meeting. I do see an opportunity potentially over time for further consolidation of the polling stations. I think there are 2 things that are happening there. One is the increased use of postal votes, and I think secondly there is an opportunity to be a bit more consistent across the borough. We have some big wards with 1 polling station. We have equally smaller wards with multiple polling stations. So whilst it is not the biggest thing on the agenda, I think this council should look to try and be more efficient in everything it does, notwithstanding some of the practicalities of, for example, Chobham not being near Windlesham, or particularly near Windlesham, especially on nights like tonight for a few of us, or indeed Bagshot not being that near, bits of Bagshot not being that near to Windlesham either. So what I'd like to propose in supplementary then to the report is that we ask the officers to consider further consolidation over time, which obviously would have to come back to this esteemed body in due course for approval. But that is something that can happen in due course. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Wilson, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that the Council should request the Electoral Registration Officer carries out a review of the Valley End NC polling district. This polling district is anomalous and creates an unnecessary cost at elections. Only 128 potential voters are registered to vote at this polling place, far fewer than any other one in the borough. These voters are in the same ward for all elections as the 3,102 potential voters in NB Chobham polling district. There is no reason for NC to be a separate district. Most of the 128 potential voters would have to drive to Valley End Institute polling place anyway, so it would be little inconvenience for them to go to Chobham Village Hall instead. Parking is much easier there too, especially around school pick-up time. It is important that elections do not interfere with schools. The Valley End Institute polling station does this, unfortunately. There is already a problem with road safety outside Valley End Infant School. It also prevents the nursery from operating in the Institute on polling days, causing inconvenience and cost to local families. The Council's finances are not sustainable in the current form. Even small savings, such as removing an anomalous polling place, are helpful. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do you have any comments, members? Right, I've got Councillor Wheeler, then Tedder, then Queen, Lee. Anyone? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I find myself somewhat flabbergasted. We have sat in this chamber this evening, at the beginning of the evening, and talked about how we are disenfranchising people from voting and how people are feeling disenfranchised from voting. It is very easy for members with cars and members that live in highly populated areas to forget that in the rural parts of this borough, not everybody is lucky enough to have a car. We have, I'm trying to think of a polite word to describe our public transport. I'm going to use the word limited. We have very limited public transport in those areas. And quite simply put, the residents of Valley End can't get to Chobham and they can't get to Woking unless they wish to walk. So it may only be 108 people or 120 people or whatever the number is that Councillor Wilson referred to, but those people are disenfranchised from being able to vote. I happen to feel it is a fundamental right of mine to go into a polling station and to put my cross against my chosen candidate. We would effectively be denying those people that right, which is something that I feel we should all be mindful of and considerate of. And so I certainly wouldn't support at this moment in time a further amendment. We have to think not only about the numbers, but about the physical distances between polling stations. And we have to be mindful that everybody is not able to get on their jet to arrive to wherever they want to do in order to be able to do whatever it is that they want to be doing. I also think that we need to be absolutely factually correct that the running of the nursery is actually impacted by this.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Tedder, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to declare an interest in as much as I am a trustee and have been for the last 40 years of Valley End Institute. I would like to correct Councillor Wilson. The polling station does not affect the nursery school at all, and that was checked out with Miss Willis at the last election because I had concerns because in the past that was a fact, but it is not, and it now doesn't affect the school at all. They choose not to go, but that's a very different thing from not being able to go. But I would ask you to consider Valley End sits between Windlesham and Chobham, and I, like Councillor Wheeler, are councillors for Chobham and Windlesham. And if you look at the demographics, if you was to use put the people from, the people from Borough Hill into Valley End, and the new housing estate that's going to be in Woodlands Lane, Heath Park Drive, you would find the pressure on the two other stations, which have got appalling. I don't know where Councillor Wilson ever is when he goes through Chobham High Street. Parking, you can't get through. If you get the recommended speed through Chobham High Street is 14 miles an hour. No, it's 14 is what they can do. It's 20 on the road, so we thought, wow, we've got a bonus. But you can actually, it says, it is so bad to try and get through the high street. So polling day is quite a problem. So, in fact, I think if you would look at the demographics and take into consideration Borough Hill, Red Line Road, Heatherway, that sort of Clearmount, and put those into Valley End, and look again at Heath Park Drive, Broadley Green, Woodlands Lane, Thorndown Lane, all the ones at that end of the village, you would also find it wouldn't clog up the village. And again, if you look at the Windlesham Club and Institute, that parking there is absolutely diabolical. And with reference to the parking at Valley End School, yes, it is a problem at when they come out of schools. But tell me which school in this borough doesn't have very poor parking. A lot of those people actually walk from Windlesham to Valley End School. So I would ask you to consider, as I said, the demographics and actually look to see how we could serve our residents better rather than just closing Valley End Institute. And if it's a question of the money, then I'm sure we could let you have it free of charge.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. That's awfully kind of you. I'll take that check. Right, Councillor Quinn.
Firstly, I'm so sorry to stand up and speak again. I realise it's getting late. The issue I have, I don't really have an issue with this report. It's just really a comment to put on the record that St Michael's East voters are left in the lurch slightly by this because we're keeping the Adult Education Centre as the polling district for St Michael's East voters, and that is in the local plan for development. I'm just wondering if that is a good situation, since we're reviewing the polling stations now, to leave it as that. And I noted it was highlighted in the report. There were two other locations identified for St Michael's East voters to go and vote at. They were the Apostolic Church and St Tarcisius Church. Now, I think I can speak for myself and Councillor Rowlands that we disagreed completely with the idea that the Apostolic Church could be used as a polling district because separate arrangements would be necessary for disabled voters because the building has problems with disability access. I think that's completely unacceptable that disabled voters might have to wait outside or vote in the foyer and be distinguished from able-bodied voters going to cast their vote. So I think that's completely unacceptable. But St Tarcisius Church, I believe, would be a good alternative. The disadvantage with this is that it's located at the very edge of the ward. But to me, accessibility to the polling station is more important than than it necessarily being at the edge of the ward. So I'm just wondering, really, is it a good situation to leave the Adult Education Centre, bearing in mind that it's supposed to be developed? What will happen if development occurs on that very quickly? What will happen to St Michael's East voters? Will they definitely still have a separate polling station? Those are questions that I really want answered.
Right, I'm just going to let Mr Stevens speak on this quickly.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Quinn. You're absolutely right. There is a concern in relation to the Adult Education Centre and its future as a polling station for us. We completely understand that. But at this point in time, whilst it's in the plan, there is no clarity over the deadline for it closing or its deliverability as a housing site. So, excuse me, we'll continue to utilise it at this point in time, and obviously the fallback position will be St Tarcisius if we need to, and ultimately, if the closure of the Adult Education Centre happens abruptly, we will do a very rapid review at that point in time.
Thank you, Mr Stevens. Right, now Councillor Lee and then Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you very much for the hard work officers have put in behind the scenes. Yeah, this is not something that's drawn up in 5 minutes, and to deliver consistent, reliable elections within our borough is outstanding. I have one minor question. On St Michael's, there's 2 ABs listed. I'm assuming we're not abolishing the AA and upsetting motorists, just to double check there. And then the other bit, just to be clear on, slightly concerned to hear that Councillor Tedder is, I think she said she was chair of the Valley End Institute and receives money from the council. I wasn't aware of that until now, so I just thought I'd observe that.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Rice.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just want to address the points that Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Tedder made in their contributions, which I think were valid contributions. But in their contributions, they were essentially making out as if it had already been decided to close Valley End. I just do want to refer them both to the paper, which is that there is a review, and in 5.4 it says, between 5.2 and 5.4 it says that the status quo would be maintained. So I think it's very important that we're actually looking at the actual agenda paper in the recommendation that it is, because I think there would be some confusion coming from the Windlesham and Chobham councillors this evening to their residents that Valley End is going to be closed when it's not. A further review is recommended, and I would want the record to make that very clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor.
I'm just speaking on behalf of Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Tedder, because they can't, because they've already spoken. The reason that they mentioned that was because Councillor Wilson highlighted it, and they were referring back to the point that he suggested it should be shut. I totally understand what you're saying, but your colleague said something completely different to what was on the paper. He suggested he was suggesting it, and they were coming back to suggest they don't think it's a good idea. I totally agree that at this point it's not being confirmed, but that's why they were speaking.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Tedder, is it a point of clarification? Because you've already spoken. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was a bit confused at the comment made by Councillor Lee about me receiving money. I don't receive any money. Valley End Institute receives money, and their books, they're registered with the Charity Commission, and their books are properly audited and submitted every year. Just because I'm chairman of something which I declared, and a trustee for many, many years, I don't receive any money from Valley End Institute.
Thank you for the clarification. Any further comments? Okay. Right, so now we're going to move to the vote on the amendment. What amendment? I'm just going to pass this on to Mr. Stevens to do the clarification. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. So as I understand it, the motion that we have in front of us is the resolution within the report alongside the additional element that was proposed by Councillor MacDonald, which relates to the review of Valley End. Is that correct? Thank you.
Is that correct, yeah? Right. So now we move to the vote. So can I have a raise of hands for please?
So my understanding is, and if I could ask for a point of clarity, that we're voting on the amendment. The amendment from Councillor Wilson was that we should review Valley End. Is that correct? I have read the paper. I always read the papers, and I find that kind of comment, quite frankly, unnecessary.
Thank you. Thank you. That's why I got Mr. Stevens to clarify what we were voting on. So I'm sure that was agreed.
Sorry, can we have absolute clarity about what we're voting on? Because I feel like there's some members who, are confused. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies, councillors, if there's some confusion. We are, or rather you, are voting on the recommendation before you in the report. So small 1 and small 2, including the review of Valley End polling district.
Okay? Right, we start again. Can I have a raise of hands, please? Okay. Thank you. Against? Oh. Abstain? Just checking. So therefore, it's been agreed by members and is carried. Thank you. Right, where are we now? I've lost my place now. Right, item number 12, review and political proportionality. I move that the scheme of proportionality remains as a set of Annex A of the agenda, and the changes to Liberal Democrat group membership are noted. Do I have a seconder? Oh, no.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. Do you have any comments, members? Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Item number 13, agenda item 13. I would like to invite Councillor Richard Wilson to introduce a report and to move the recommendation therein. Councillor Wilson, would you like to introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose this item and reserve my right to speak once it's been seconded. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor MacDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second.
Thank you. No, he needs to speak, doesn't he? Councillor Wilson, would you like to speak, please?
Thank you, Mayor. In 2017, the village of Windlesham was split in two without the consent of its residents. People believe that this was done in order to gerrymander elections in favour of the Conservative Party. Well, it didn't work out like that. Voters cannot be taken for granted like this, and the voters of Windlesham did not consent. The names given to the new borough wards did not even acknowledge that the village had been split. This motion will address that at least. It will also include residents' views in their governance for the first time in Windlesham. A resident of Windlesham, Tony Murphy, requested these ward changes, and the governance working group considered them and agreed to recommend them to council. Even if council resolves to grant this motion, the people of Windlesham will still be governed in a way they do not consent to. They do not consent to be split over two borough wards, and they do not consent to being in a parish with two bigger villages which they subsidise and are neglected by. They did not consent to the borough ward split. They do not consent to the current arrangements, and they will not consent until there is one Windlesham, not north and south. This motion is a small, cost-free step that the council can take to acknowledge the injustice done to Windlesham and its residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor
Thank you, Mayor. My focus is very much on the report that we have in front of us. I don't wish to muddy the waters in any way with respect to other discussions about Windlesham Parish Council, which I think Councillor Wilson was alluding to. I think it is right that that this name change is considered. I have discussed with officers that there is no costs beyond the opportunity costs, so it's a question of prioritising it into the workload. I think as we trust them in many things, we'll trust them to prioritise this one appropriately, but with a view to moving it forward and doing some housekeeping that probably should have been done when the wards were last looked at overall. So I support the motion as is, as the report as is, only on the basis that it doesn't cost us anything and that it improves the improves the locality thinking for the residents of Windlesham particularly. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Right, Councillor Wheeler. Tedder. Okay, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, as is fairly evident, I rarely agree with Councillor Wilson. However, I certainly do agree that it is really important that a part of a voting group should not be ignored. And for the residents of one part, it's a third basically of the village of Windlesham, to have no recognition that they exist when it comes to voting is quite frankly very disappointing. They vote for Bagshot, which is not a village with which they associate their residency. So I think this is one small step towards at least acknowledging that those residents in that part of the village do exist and do have a voice in democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Tedder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Being a Windlesham born and bred, the village feel very bitter, as Councillor Wilson has said. They were one village, and they think they are one village, and they want to be one village. And I would ask everyone in this chamber this evening to please support Councillor Wilson's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tedder. Councillor Quinn, and then Councillor Garrett.
I will be supporting Councillor Wilson's motion. I stood a few years ago in Bagshot, Windlesham and Chobham, my first time running for election for Surrey County Council, and I realised how much of an issue this was at the Borough Council level. My only thoughts are we could be soon hearing news from central government about unitary authorities coming to Surrey. Is it really worth doing this now instead of waiting for that news when there might not be another Surrey Heath Borough Council election where the wards are named as such? I note that the community is fully represented at the county council level at the moment because Bagshot, Windlesham and Chobham, all three names of the villages are complete in the name of the division. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. I mean, happy to support this. I just really wanted to query reference 1.8 because there's been much made about there's no cost. But the council considers whether to conduct a public consultation. A public consultation is undertaken. Extraordinary meeting the council is convened, and as we've been told today, using electricity and people driving to the chamber, etc. So I just want to cover that thing. There is absolutely no cost at all in this moving this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Lee.
First of all, my apologies for my comment earlier, Councillor Tedder, if it was in any way offensive, my apologies. I'm fully in support of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Anyone else? Councillor Rice?
I just want to make one point on behalf of the leader, just to respond to Councillor Garrett. Just in the report, the Section 151 officer comments sets out his response to the cost question.
Okay. Is that agreed, members? So, members, we are happy to agree to the proposal as amended? Agreed. Thank you. Right.
Sorry, just on a point of order.
No,
what was the amendment?
No, sorry. Sorry. That's my reading. And Mr. Stevens, I blame him. Are we happy to agree? The motion. Thank you. Right. Okay, moving on. Questions from councillors. Questions from councillors. I can advise that 2 questions have been received from councillors. Councillor Murray Rowlands, would you like to read your first question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question related to the non-publication of a very significant cultural event in the borough, and the absence of it indicated to some people that it was just being organised by King's International, one of our large comprehensives, and didn't have the support of the council. So the question is, and it's quite understandable in that case, why people thought that it was simply...
Councillor Rowlands, what's the question, please?
Okay, shall I read the question? Okay. Why was the editorial decision made not to include the recent Gilbert and Sullivan Festival commemorating Sir Arthur Sullivan's association with Camberley and Surrey Heath, and not included in the recent edition of Heath Scene? That was basically the question.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to reply, please?
I would, thank you, Mayor. Yes, the members referred to the verbal answers already provided to this question by the leader and the Chief Executive at the executive meeting of the 19th of November 2024, yeah, that's right, and to the follow-up written response provided by the Communications Manager very efficiently on the 20th of November 2024, not 20224, at 2019 hours, in line with the commitment given by the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Rowlands, do you want to ask a supplementary question?
I do, yes. I just wondered whether there's an awareness that the failure for it to appear in Heath Scene, it did appear in a giveaway free magazine, but it was referred to me that people just thought it was something being offered by King's International itself, and not a council activity for which council had contributed funds towards it. So the perception was that a lot of people thought that this was simply a King's International event and did not have the support of the council as a result. Question.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to reply?
Thank you. Well, first of all, this wasn't a council event. It wasn't in the annual plan. It wasn't budgeted for. But what I can say is that the council officers did everything within their power to try and support yourself and the other organisers of this event to make sure that as many people as possible were aware of it and those that wished to partake could. I know it was well attended, and obviously the children involved much appreciated the activity, but at the end of the day, it was an activity at King's International. It was not a council event. And we need to be mindful of how much resource went into supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, and thank you, Councillor Rowlands, for your question. Question number 2. Councillor Rowlands, would you like to read out your second question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The consequences of passing responsibility for traffic management in Surrey, management to Surrey County Council in the past has been a failure to police illegal parking at the Frimley Road junction with the A30 by Surrey County Council. What action will be taken to remedy this situation, continuous bad situation on that corner?
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. I'm advised that the Home Planning and Enforcement Portfolio holder will respond to this question. Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Rowlands. I believe the question being asked relates to parking enforcement. So we'll answer based upon that assumption. Until April 2023, parking enforcement on the highway was the responsibility of Woking Borough Council under an agency agreement between Woking and Surrey County Council. Whilst the previous Surrey Heath parking manager was a joint post between Surrey Heath and Woking, it was Woking acting as the enforcing authority under that agency agreement. It was the decision by Surrey County Council to terminate the agreement, which took effect from April 2023, and in which neither Surrey Heath nor Woking had any recourse. It was solely the decision of Surrey County Council as sovereign authority for on-street parking enforcement to withdraw from the agreement. Officers at Surrey Heath have sought to retain close working relationships with county colleagues on parking enforcement matters and have referred complaints specifically relating to the Frimley Road junction with the A30 to county colleagues. As a direct result, additional patrols were put in place through the county contractor, NSL. Officers will continue to refer complaints of this nature to Surrey County Council. However, we would encourage the public and fellow councillors to contact Surrey County Council's appointed contractor directly using the email address surreyparkingenforcement@nslservices.co.uk.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Rowlands, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah. Just to make the comment is that this has gone on for so long, it's got into a customary habit that people feel free to park across the double and single lines and take no notice of them. It's become almost a customary process. And what action can be contemplated to do something about this continuous situation?
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Ashby, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Rowlands. Unfortunately, customer practice is a more difficult thing to break, particularly when people have been used to parking. Personally, I have contacted NSL on a number of occasions about parking issues around the borough, and I have found them to be relatively responsive to sending out extra patrols to actually basically place enforcement notices on the cars that are illegally parked. I'm happy to continue doing that. I would also encourage my fellow councillors, if they see the issues in their areas, to do the same, so that we can send a message that we will not tolerate it. Beyond that, in terms of enforcement, constant communication with our county council colleagues is what we need to continue doing.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Thank you, Councillor Ashby, and thank you, Councillor Rowlands, for your questions. Leaders' question time. I would now like to invite members to ask questions to the leader, Councillor Sean MacDonald, on issues relating to executive functions. Councillor White first, please.
Thank you. I wasn't going to ask.
Sorry. Please be aware that 20 minutes is allocated to the leader's question time.
Yeah, I don't want to prolong the meeting any longer than necessary. Leader, earlier this month, the end of last month, Wundersham Parish Council wrote to you and asked about the Christmas tree recycling. You very kindly replied, as did Councillor Rise. Thank you, Councillor Rise, for your answer. It was very good. I'm not saying that yours wasn't, but it was very informative and it gave a lot of other reasons that we hadn't heard. But in your reply, Leader, you said that costs to Surrey Heath Borough Council provide, and the decision not to write, it's gone small and I haven't got my reading glasses with me. In summary, this is a discretionary service that costs Surrey Heath Borough Council to provide, and the decision is not recent as it was included within the budget those double-hatted members of Surrey Heath Borough Council and WPC voted for in February 2024. Can you tell me which budget line it was on, and can I have a copy of it, please?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll have a look at that and we'll come back to you. But I think my answer was as polite as his answer, by the way. I'm not so keen on this, good cop, bad cop thing that you're trying to portray tonight, all right? So.
What are you doing? Okay, so Councillor Lisa Fine, then it's
Thank you, Mayor. I apologise, members, for the late hour. I will try and be as succinct as possible. The people of Watchetts Ward, specifically the drivers within the James Road estate and the children, young people, parents and carers who need to get to 3 school locations have been grossly endangered at least every few weeks over approximately the last 10 years. The problem that they have faced is malfunctioning traffic lights at the junction of Crabtree Road and Frimley Road. The lights for drivers exiting the estate get stuck on red, and then the pedestrian crossing doesn't work. The result is that cars have to edge their way onto the very busy Frimley Road, and as Surrey County Council did not replace our crossing guard, parents and carers, myself included, have to walk out onto oncoming traffic with an arm in the air to stop traffic, to allow children to safely cross. It's not only incredibly dangerous, but it causes utter chaos. We've been informed that the traffic lights are so old that they're considered to be obsolete and spare parts cannot be sourced. Could I ask the leader if he feels that he could support the people in Watchetts to secure a replacement traffic light system at this very busy junction?
Thank you. Councillor Cope?
No, that's me.
Oh, sorry, Councillor. Sorry.
No, it's all right. We've all had enough of this now, haven't we? Let's be frank. Thank you, Mayor.
Time's getting on.
Yeah, I'll be quick. We'll certainly have a look at that. It is a notable fact that we have tried to engage Surrey County Council on a number of issues. And I think Councillor Rowlands raised an issue earlier around Surrey's responsibilities. We're not finding them particularly responsive. I think my learned colleague here has had 0 responses from the portfolio holder for transport. I actually have got to 2 now, including 1 this week, so I'm quite pleased about that. Sorry? No, it was that somebody else would deal with it, but then that's what I was told last time 3 months ago when I was advocating on behalf of a resident in the St Michael's ward. So we will do what we can, and I'm happy, and I have raised it with the lack of responsiveness from the portfolio holder with the leader of Surrey County Council before. But there are real issues here of risk, which you've highlighted in your question. I happen to have taken my life in my own hands crossing that road to attend the event that Councillor Rowlands referred to earlier. So yeah, very much understand that it's a busy road with some challenges, many school children, clearly an area of high risk. So we'll do what we can to nudge that along to the best of our ability, conscious of the fact though ultimately it's not our responsibility. It's Surrey County Council's, and very regrettably, but I have heard it from a number of sources, it seems to be data-driven, e.g. until something really bad happens, nothing happens. And that is a horrendous thought to think about when we think of all the children crossing that road every day.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Cope?
Thank you, Mayor. Me again. Members will have been very saddened to hear of the closing of what I considered to be Camberley's best curry house, Camberley Tandoori, recently. That followed hot on the heels of the closure of the Duke of York in our town centre. Some people may say that that's due to increases in parking charges. Some people may say it's due to the leader talking down our town and constantly talking down the council's finances. What does the leader put it down to, and does the council have any communication with businesses when they shut to ask why that may be?
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald?
Thank you. I'm going to refer this one across to the responsible party for economic development.
in terms of the parking charges, it's 20 pence. And considering the Conservative government actually put up the cost of beer by quite a considerable amount over 14 years, I don't think the extra 20 pence is keeping people away from those pubs. We don't own those buildings, Councillor Cope, you know we don't own those buildings, so we don't have any authority over the letting of those. Obviously, we're disappointed when any business closes. I was a big fan of Camberley Tandoori myself, but there is very little we can do when this is an issue for private enterprise.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, can I just remind before you start that we've got 15 minutes and that's it for the whole of it. I want to complete this quickly, sorry. 10 o'clock, otherwise it will be 10:30 and then 11:30 and so on.
Thank you, Mayor. The Council recently successfully prosecuted someone for fly tipping in an area just outside Windlesham Village. It's a beautiful area, popular with walkers, joggers, horse riders, but it is often, very often, scarred by fly tipping and litter thrown from vehicles. Or rather, it was scarred. For the last few weeks, there's been no new fly tipping there, which is incredibly unusual. In fact, there's been no litter either. There used to be cans and bottles and fast food containers on the grass verge on a regular basis. But for the last few weeks, this area has been transformed. It is clean and unpolluted by fly tipping or litter. I have no doubt that the prosecution and sentencing has led to this. Would the leader like to join me on behalf of the residents of Windlesham in thanking the Council's enforcement team for their painstaking work, gathering evidence and then carrying out a successful prosecution? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor MacDonald?
Yes, I would like to congratulate the enforcement team on their actions, but not just on behalf of the residents of Windlesham, but as he knows, it's right on the border with Lightwater and also right on the border with West End. And it's a road I frequent myself and have seen the fly tipping there in the past and reported it, and also seen some of the people picking up the fly tip. So it is a disgrace that these things go on, and we will continue to support the enforcement team in their actions to bring the culprits to bear. So yes, thanks very much to the officers involved for that, led by, of course, Ms Greenfield.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Any further questions? If there's no further questions, we're going to move on to agenda item 15. I move to the under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public to be concluded from the meetings for the consideration of business set out in the item 14 of the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 and 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to second that motion.
Is that agreed?